Hello fellow history lovers, welcome back to my channel. If you love British history, then this is definitely the right place for you. My name is Philippa Lacey Brewell and I'm from British History Tours, and in this series I cover things that have happened in this week in British history. This week we're looking at events which happened between the 6th and the 12th of April. This week in British history is a weekly series, but there are some virtual tours which I've done in response to the fact that we're all on lockdown at the moment, because as I record this, we are in the middle of the COVID-19 outbreak. On the 6th of April 1199, Richard I, better known as Richard the Lionheart, died in the arms of his mother, Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. Richard had received a crossbow arrow shot to his shoulder, fired by a archer on the battlements of a castle that they were trying to siege at Toulouse. The arrow was removed, but the wound turned gangrenous, and that led to his death. Richard apparently forgave the archer. I think he was almost... There are accounts that he was sort of quite impressed by the shot, the accuracy of the shot from such a distance. But he forgave his archer, but his men did not. And although Richard pardoned him, the poor man was captured and flayed alive, which is just... Richard was only 42 when he died, and he was succeeded by his younger brother, King John, otherwise known, you may have heard of as Bad King John, and we will cover him more in June at the anniversary of the sealing of Magna Carta. On the 6th of April 1843, William Wordsworth was appointed Poet Laureate. He was the oldest person to ever be appointed to that position. It was the day before his 73rd birthday. His birthday was the 7th of April 1770, his birth date. So this year we're actually celebrate 250 years since his birth. William took the position on the proviso that he would not be expected to write poetry on demand. Ever since William's time, the position of Poet Laureate has been more of an honorary title, and the role holders can interpret their role as they wish. It is 50 years ago this week that the Beatles broke up on the 10th of April 1970. The reason for the breakup is probably like any breakup. There are multiple reasons why it happened. Some fans blamed Yoko Ono, John Lennon's relationship with Yoko Ono, and she was subjected to racist abuse after the breakup. The Beatles still have a huge fan base. They broke up in 1970. That was a decade before I was born, and yet I would call myself a fan. My children listen to their music, and Liverpool, it has hundreds of thousands of visitors every year going there to see the houses of the Beatles, to see the shops that were and streets that are named in their songs. And you can go there, and you can go down to the Albert Docks, and there is the Beatles Story, which is a fabulous place to go if you're interested. You can see the whole chronological story of how the Beatles came into being, and it ends with a really poignant display, I suppose, which is a reconstruction of John Lennon's flat, I think in New York, and there's just a piano, and it's sort of white decor, and it has him singing Imagine. It's very, very poignant, very emotional actually. But you can go to Liverpool and you can see many of these the places. You can see the barber shop, you can see the fire station, all these, the Strawberry Fields gates. You can see all these places that are in the songs, because the Beatles wrote about what they knew. So physically, we can go to these places. And one particular place I want to make mention of is Penny Lane, because Penny Lane almost had its name changed, or it would have had its name changed had certain group had their way, and that was the anti-slavery movement. Penny was the street was named after a man called Penny, who was a slave trader. Liverpool, it was a big dock for trade of goods and people, and they to commemorate the name of a slave trader on streets, and there's many streets in Liverpool that are the same, because these people were wealthy and powerful in Liverpool at the time, at their time, so this is why they had streets named after them. But there was then a movement to get these streets renamed. Penny Lane, because of the link with the Beatles and obviously the song Penny Lane, was not changed. The name was not changed because it obviously attracts a lot of people to the area. The payoff for that was to create the Slavery Museum, which again is in the docks and is well worth a visit. Everyone should understand the history of that and its links to Liverpool. But the reason I mention that is because it's the link to the Beatles, which means that Penny Lane is still called Penny Lane. The sign, I believe, is now painted on. I have been, but I can't remember. I think it's painted on because people just kept nicking it. Do people know what nicking means? Nicking means stealing. I don't know if that's something from where I'm from or a term everyone knows. There you go. If you didn't know it before, now you do. Nicking, to steal. On the 10th of April 1912, the luxury White Star liner Titanic set sail from Southampton, stopping at Cherbourg to pick up more passengers. This was the first leg of what we now know was the incomplete journey. Titanic hitting an iceberg and sinking on the 14th of April. We will cover more on Titanic in next week's episode. As many of you will probably know, the history of symbols, emblems and language I find extremely interesting because we use these things all the time. Obviously we use language all the time, but we see icons, emblems, whatever, all the time, and we don't always know where they came from. A very significant one that I want to talk to you today about: the Union Jack, the flag of Great Britain and the UK. In 1603, England and Scotland had the same monarch for the first time. Elizabeth I had died with no heirs, and she was succeeded by her cousin's son, James VI of Scotland. He was a descendant of Henry VII, and he became James I of England and Ireland. At this time, the union of England, Ireland and Wales and Scotland was purely a personal one. There was no political unity at this time. However, there was question over what flag the ships sailing in our waters should be flying, and in 1606 James and his council decreed that there would be a new flag to be flown on ships. This new flag combined the red St George's Cross and the white cross on a blue background of St Andrew. Now, what's also interesting here is it's called the Union Jack, and that is because of the maritime link. So we call it Union Jack, but actually a jack is linked to the fact that it was flown on ships, and actually, so we now know it as the Union Jack. Possibly initially the word union wasn't even used. That started to be used a bit later. And Jack referred to the maritime link. I can't find a conclusive reason why it's called the Union Jack. There are a number of theories. The most likely theory is that the flag that is flown on the front of a warship is called a jack. But if you know different, please do put it in the comments, because I'm actually quite interested as to how we got this name Jack for our flag. Thank you for watching this episode of This Week in British History. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do give it a thumbs up, and if you comment below, I will respond to your comments. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch and to comment. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you know anyone who would love this channel, please share it with them. And if you want more of a daily dose of history, please do come along to my Facebook page or Instagram profile. You will find the links in the show notes, as well as suggested further reading on the topics that I've covered today. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next week.